Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we are going to learn from ABM experts at Tenable, and they're going to be sharing some best practices around using account intelligence and personalization techniques to drive better engagement across that buyer journey. We know that a lot of B2B buyers expect those personalized experiences. They want that B2C buyer experience coming into them as a B2B buyer. And Tenable is leading the way by seamlessly integrating Demandbase's account intelligence with Trendamon's website personalization to deliver highly targeted, persona-driven journeys. So over the next 30 minutes, you will learn how Tenable prioritizes accounts using things like qualification scoring and intent signals, some techniques for identifying key stakeholders within their target accounts, how they create those personalized content journeys based on the account engagement data, how they're able to connect off-site research with on-site personalization, and then how they measure the impact of integrated personalization on pipeline and revenue. And I'm so happy today that we are joined by our ABM experts from Tenable. So we have Limor Denai, who's Director of Web Strategy, Stacey Chen, who's Senior CRO Marketing Manager, and Catherine Rettenbach, who's Marketing Operations Manager. Before we get started and open it up to questions, I just wanted to share a little bit of context around what is B2B marketing's reality in 2025. As we are quarter of the way through the year now, here's what's defining the role of marketing leaders today. There's more self-serve buyers, as I mentioned. B2B buyers now prefer to research, compare and evaluate solutions on their own before engaging with sales. CMOs are expected to own a larger portion of that revenue engine. The success of marketing is no longer measured solely by engagement metrics, but by its contribution to pipeline and deal acceleration and close-won revenue. There's less patience for generic outreach. Buyers are overwhelmed with marketing and sales noise, and there's just little tolerance for that broad, untailored messaging. And there's higher expectations for marketing's impact. So CMOs are being charged with the ability to prove marketing's effectiveness with clear data on how their campaigns and programs are influencing pipeline, conversion rates, and overall profitability. And then that compared with just what the economic environment looks like today, they are required to do more with less. And most CMOs are reporting that they have smaller budgets. So as a result, only 24% of CMOs say that they have sufficient budget to execute their strategy. So that requires a lot of precision. And then that compared with just the situation of today's B2B buyer's journey. It's increasingly anonymous, it's increasingly complex. There's multiple people that are involved in that buying journey. And a lot of these buying signals are anonymous to us today as marketers and as sellers. As I mentioned, those buyers are getting to that form fill stage. They're wanting to speak to sales much later in the process. So that makes it hard for us to see, which accounts are in market. And that compared with only 5% of B2B buyers are in market for your solutions at any given time. It's just adding this extra level of complexity. So how do you find these buyers, and how can you use your budget more efficiently to drive revenue growth? And part of that solution is actually using AI to light up that buyer journey. So you're able to get all of those signals on when that initial research is being done off your website, if they're showing any competitor intent, if they're researching your products or services, if they're visiting your website anonymously, all of these signals that show some kind of propensity to buy, so that we as marketers and sellers can get engagement with that buyer committee much earlier on in that buyer journey as well. And I think the other thing that kind of helps here is the whole kind of focus around account-based marketing as well. So that, my screen seems to have frozen. It's not progressing to my next slide. Let me see. For some reason, it's not progressing. Let's keep trying here. Okay, It's not moving to the next slide. But I think, it's well known that account-based strategies enables organizations to be able to identify those in-market accounts early. They're able to personalize that engagement. They're able to orchestrate those seamless experiences across channels. So those teams that are going to be able to connect the dots, identify those accounts that are showing those buying signals, be able to leverage things like intent data and engagement signals, are going to have that competitive edge as well. So Avishai, I know you had some research before we go into Ask the Experts that you wanted to share that kind of complements this whole kind of messaging around how that B2B buyer journey has shifted.
Sure. Thanks, Leanne. And thank you for the Tenable team for joining us. By the way, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Amazing. Yeah. So what I wanted to share is just a few insights from a recent buyer journey study that looks at trends in how buying committees, how buying groups are changing, how they're evolving. Again, from a first-party website perspective. And to understand and to give a bit more context to what we'll be discussing today about those transformations in go-to-market, in how to take ABM to the next level, and why do we need to become essentially more effective in our go-to-market motions. So to give you just a bit of context about Trendemon and the insights that we have, where we're gathering that. So Trendemon really is about transforming and optimizing buyer journeys on the website. And increasing conversion rates from anonymous website visitors from your ICP to pipeline conversions. And now to the trends themselves. So what we've been seeing in 24 compared to 23 is a decline in conversion rates from anonymous visits at the account level to pipeline opportunities and to closed won. So a 30% decline there. Which means that it's becoming increasingly harder to convert our buyers. And this aligns with what Leanne, with what you mentioned about the challenge of converting buyers, they wanting to have, to lead their own journeys, to read on their own, and so forth. So that's one challenge that requires us to be better and to become more efficient and effective. The other trend is regarding the buying group. And what we've seen is that the buying group, the buying committee, is growing in size. So the average size is about 15 people. But the interesting thing is that they're reading less. And that means that their attention span is shortening. It's diminishing. We have less time to capture their attention, to give them the right information. And that creates an additional challenge. And this really is the premise for what we wanted to discuss with our friends from Tenable today about their approach and their strategies that allow them to address these challenges of, on one hand, diminishing attention and conversion rates, on the other hand, growing buying committee with more people you have to convince at a short amount of time, and how do we take ABM and leverage ABM principles to the next level. So happy to kick this off and start the first question to Tenable and to Limor. And Limor, we've been, I think, working together for almost 5 years now. So we've kind of been able to see a lot of those transformations kind of unfold together. But maybe it'll be helpful if you could give us a quick overview of your ABM and demand gen strategy at Tenable.
Sure. First of all, I want to introduce Tenable as well, just for the audience that doesn't know Tenable. So we're an exposure management company. We help companies close their cybersecurity gaps. We have an AI-powered exposure management platform called Tenable One, and we provide visibility, insight, and actions across the different attack surfaces. So from IT infrastructures, cloud environments, critical infrastructures, and more. So just wanted to give a little bit of an overview. So what we currently do in our kind of ABM approach is, I think it's in many ways what a lot of marketers do. We look for the right accounts. We're trying to look for the right people within these accounts and kind of catch them in their buyer's journey with different content that's going to be engaging to them. And we use tools like Demandbase and Demandbase to do that. So I don't know, Catherine, Stacy, you're welcome to jump in and add more as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think the approach is pretty straightforward in trying to understand who those buyers are within our target accounts. And that's really the most important piece of why we are using tools like Demandbase and Demandbase is understanding who those buyers are, de-anonymizing those people as best we can throughout that journey. And then as Stacy will go into of how we're delivering the content that they need at those points in their buyer's journey.
Thank you for that, Catherine. So as an example, so as a part of like delivering relevant and timely content, we've been experimenting internally with like funnel-based content suggestions, where previously we've just matched content to product interest. So by taking the full account into picture, by looking at not just their web behavior, but what they clicked on, the pages that they're consuming, everything that they've done in their research phase that led up to that first opportunity, is important for us to kind of take a look at to know exactly what they should be reading and how can we get in front of them even faster. This also helps us just inform our broader marketing team on any potential changes that we might need to propose, just like updated messaging or any gaps in the funnel for our content. So that way we could be continuously increasing engagement and conversions.
Fantastic. So
I love those
just
examples. Oh, sorry,
yeah, go ahead, Nan. Sorry.
I was going to say, I just love those examples of being able to leverage that insight by just knowing kind of what your buyers are interested in, but that's also then in turn informing your content strategy as well. So I love those kind of that dual kind of purpose and insights into how you're using the data.
So just in terms of, if we're looking at kind of classic, or I'm sure, people are listening, some of them are just starting with ABM. So one aspect is that personalization at the account level. But what you're talking about is actually taking it deeper to the funnel stage, so to be able to understand their position. And another challenge that some companies are also dealing with is multi-product. So we're talking about this matrix of interests and stages and personas. So the game is becoming multi-dimensional, right? We have to address different needs at different stages. How is Tenable addressing that? I'm sure you have different offerings, and how are you connecting different buyers with different offers there?
So as Limor said, Tenable is an exposure management company, and the cyber threats can come from all different entry points within an organization, depending on how it is set up. So within those organizations, what we are trying to figure out is who is responsible for securing those different entry points. There's, in a connected world, there's so many different ways that it can happen, and organizations at our customers are set up so differently. And what we're trying to understand is who is responsible for what, understanding what their problems are, how we can address them, and using things like Demandbase and Demandbase, we are starting to really break down that buyer personas and how they are different for each and every product, because the concerns are different, the problems are different for something like OT security versus cloud security. They are different needs for each of those buyers. So we've been using a lot of the historical data to understand it from the marketing perspective to inform the way that we are outreaching through all of our channels, including sales. Oh, Stacy, you're on
So
mute.
we're talking about, okay. Sorry, Stacy.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Loud and
Okay,
clear.
good. I was just wanted to jump in here because I remember the day that like Catherine had told me that we had ICP scoring available, and that was like a huge breaking point because if you look at the way we've used Trendemon in the past, it was very reactive. Like we were very much waiting for somebody to maybe visit a deeper, an inner web page that maybe was tied to a product, or we were waiting for them to respond to a campaign. But with ICP scoring now added in, and we were able to at least initially use it through our Salesforce integration, it just allowed us to be much more prescriptive on the content and offers that we were providing to our customers. So instead of waiting for them to find out about the solution, we were able to tell them about the solution because we knew that it was a great fit for them and their organization. And especially since we are a multi-product organization, as Catherine mentioned, there's so many different stakeholders that we have to inform that the solution even exists. So that way they can meet internally to kind of work on that business case for us. But in relying on that ICP score, it just has really helped us like be able to get in front of them in that critical research phase before they ever decide to interact with sales. And Catherine can tell you later about how we found that, like, you know, and as you all mentioned, they definitely are reaching out to sales just far, far later in the buyer's journey. So this has very much been the case for us as well.
Yeah, I love to hear those examples as well. I think, you know, ABM is like that's like one of the perfect use cases where you have like multiple personas, you've got such a diverse product portfolio, and it just enables you with the insights that you're getting through Trendemon and through Demandbase, just enable you to really segment your audience and then serve those messages to those buyers for the products that are the best fit for them, that they're showing intent on as well. I'd love to understand a little bit more around your usage of Demandbase as well. So firstly, how long have you been using Demandbase? And then specifically diving into understanding how you're using intent signals. I'd love to explore that bit a little bit more if we can.
Sure. So we've been using Demandbase for almost 5 years, so predating when I joined Tenable. But it has really transformed, I think, in the last couple of years from a tactical tool that we were just kind of, you know, checking in on to and more of that kind of reactive approach that Stacy was mentioning with Trendemon, where we're using Demandbase to really strategically form the go-to-market approach of both on our marketing side and on our sales side. So we are using things like ICP scores and our keyword intent lists for each of our products to build out a map of understanding where are people in their journey, how do they progress in their interaction with Tenable, and realizing that it's constantly evolving. So having the ICP scores and our keyword intent signals be something that is constantly evolving, and we're always updating as the needs change, as the product updates, as our audience shifts. That's been the most important part in building out kind of who are we speaking to, what are we speaking to them about.
Yeah, I love those
One of the
examples.
things,
And you mentioned your sales teams as well. Like, are they using that insights as well in their like sales approach?
IP has been really weaved into everything across kind of how the sales team does their account planning for the year, for the quarter. They are using it to prioritize how they are outreaching accounts, and same with the intent signal. So things like that pipeline predict score are another piece. We are using, we always, you know, when we're doing enablement sessions around Demandbase, the big things that they approach us with need is efficiency and prioritization of, you know, they might have a large account list, or you know, we have a target effort around a certain product line. They need help prioritizing and know where to spend their time. So breaking it down by, this is your first thing you can prioritize, use the ICP score to prioritize that list. and then use the intent signals for what you should be talking to them about. So you know that you're talking to the right audience about the right topic, and you're presenting something that could be interesting to that end user.
Fantastic. One of the things we talked about in the preparation for this is another transition that you've done, which I think is really inspiring, is this movement from a campaign approach to an always-on approach. Because we talked about the transformation from the resolution part, right? So going from account-based to persona-based and breaking that down, which requires collecting more signals and consolidating. Maybe Limor, Catherine, Stacy, if you can share what that process of moving from a more tactical motion, reactive as you call it, to something that is an always-on motion. How does that look like? How do you make that transition?
I'll let Stacy speak to kind of how she has changed it, because I think that's where the biggest shift has had is on our website of having that always-on approach.
Yes. So I can say that it's truly through the fact that we are lucky to be part of a cross-collaborative team where everyone does care. If anything, they're always asking us for more data so that way they can go back to their teams and make sure that they're making data recommended just decisions on where we should be optimizing content or messaging, or maybe even the audiences that we assumed were coming to certain pages, but actually they're not naturally finding it. So is there SEO play there? There's so much that we can uncover by just simply letting our, like, for example, our internal stakeholders know that for your specific product, here's just what people are naturally browsing, and here's where campaigns are pushing to. Where can we essentially clean this up a little bit so that we're optimizing this buyer's journey for your end user the way that you want to? But then also, what are some like focuses for us internally as a business that we want to make sure that we are pushing out that maybe is not as efficient right now, because maybe they're not going into those deeper pages of our website. Maybe they're just landing on the homepage and they're just hoping to get all the information there. Whatever their preference is, we're trying to just meet them where they are, and hopefully just giving them a overall better website experience out of it.
Yeah, and this aligns with the anonymity, right? Because
sorry, Avishai,
right,
you go ahead. I was going to say,
no, I'm just saying we talked about the
you go ahead. I think there's might be a little bit of a lag.
Sorry, yeah, that's the problem with these things. So I'm just saying Leanne talked about the anonymity and the challenge, and not everybody is going to want to expose themselves, fill up forms, and so this need to be present even at the anonymous stage, even when we don't know specifically who that person is becoming more important. And I think the use of intent signals by browsing content, at least that's something that we're also seeing becoming more and more effective, is using content consumption as a persona identification signal, because there's a lot to learn from what they are reading, and that can be leveraged when we are building our content, we're creating outreach. And so I wanted to know if that's something that you started talking about, how to leverage those website signals into kind of creating those better persona-based audiences at Tenable, to then track them and engage them. So maybe you can share a quick example of something like that you've done.
Yes, so internally we do use an email sequencing tool for our SDRs, and what we've done even to kind of like mimic that movement is for any kind of content items that the SDRs are sending out, we also make sure that we have a complimentary like Demandbase experience for them as well, because if the SDRs are also sending known contacts back to our website, ideally we want to also be there to make sure we're kind of continuing that buyer's experience. So it's like, what's that next piece of content that we can be recommending to you? Or what's the next best CTA? Is it booking a meeting with the SDR? Is it maybe reading this data sheet? These are all things that, for example, we're able to kind of really distill down, especially from Demandbase, just being even able to see like after that very first buyer comes by our website and de-anonymizes themselves, just like the onslaught of other anonymous visitors that come from that same organization that are now, checking out who is Tenable, what is it that they offer, what is it that you want to bring internally. So it's like we see that effect. So we have set up experiences to make sure that we are ready to greet them when they come.
I think
I love that
that's exactly
example.
what we've seen of looking at the history of their interactions with us. So looking at an account level, if you look at the history of how they've interacted with us, say before they become a customer, you can see the level of detail that they are going into, and that's where we get an understanding of who the buyer is and where it is in their buyer's journey. So if it is something that's more tactical or technical, you can kind of presume that they might be a little bit earlier in their research journey. And as Leanne has mentioned, they're doing that research so much more, and it's a longer process, and they're doing it by themselves. So as that kind of shifts, and you can see almost like the handoff is happening of where that technical practitioner is using something, and they've finally, filled out a form and made themselves known. And then you'll see a spike in activity where it's like back to the beginning of who is Tenable, what do they do? And maybe they go into like the white paper realm where the content gets a little bit broader and they want to see how has Tenable done this in the past? How have they been successful? So they'll see a success story, and then they'll de-anonymize themselves. So you can see it progress up the chain in that in the companies, where it's from the practitioner to the leader to the executive to the C-suite as the type of content they are interacting with. And as they're completing forms, and that's where we track that history. And then on the website, we can present them with the content that is most needed at that time for that person.
I love all those examples of like just the insights that you're able to get across that buyer's journey and about your buyers, particularly you're selling into those multiple, there's multiple stakeholders in the buyer journey, but you also have a big kind of diverse product portfolio as well. So through the insights and data that you're getting from both Tenable and Demandbase, have you uncovered any like unexpected insights about buyer behavior?
I think it's more just validation of what we had presumed maybe from the marketing end. And there's a nice feature in Demandbase where you can see the marketing and sales engagement. And you can see it through a timeline of when does what channel it may be, when do they interact, and the validation of how much surround marketing has to have throughout the entire process, even as an opportunity has opened and we're getting in those negotiations, and sales, has started to be involved. Marketing still needs to be validating throughout the entire process. So that's been a big piece for both marketing to understand and for the sales side to understand. And it's, I'm sure, a point of frustration. We wish we could get in there sooner and have conversations to move things along, but we're using our digital channels to push things along and continue to inform, educate, and push to closing a deal.
And I think that's part of the always on strategy. They always, when they visit the website, they're always going to see a piece of content that's relevant to them at that time of their journey. So that's the kind of what we're trying to achieve here. Always on approach and always bringing the right content to the right buyer at the right journey point.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the right approach as well. And I think about, you mentioned the kind of handover from marketing to sales. I think with that always on approach, like that handover almost doesn't exist now, because as you mentioned, we are continuing to, surround those accounts. So we have that always on approach as well. We have a similar approach with our own marketing at Demandbase as well. We've definitely seen the impacts of that be by being able to move those buyers through each of those different buyer stages at a quicker rate, so we can impact things like velocity and that conversion rate to that next kind of stage in the funnel as well. So I think that's really key.
I have just one question to Limor. Sorry.
No worries.
So,
go ahead.
you know, when we started, when we started working, I remember I think maybe after the first or second year, we shared the results and we talked about the uplift. And I think Limor, you said, okay, how do we get to 2x uplift next year? How do we continuously improve on that? I think that was something that also drove us to really figure out this isn't like a one-off, right? That we always have to continue improving there. So the question is, what are the main KPIs? How are you measuring that successful motion? What are the key things that you would recommend marketers look out and measure to really make sure they're on the right track?
Well, I think to Leanne's point earlier on, right? Marketers now, it's not just about MQLs anymore. It's about the revenue and the pipeline. And we definitely see, and that's actually what we're looking at now and measuring for. And we're looking at pipeline influence, opportunity influence, and things like that. So that's definitely where obviously with specific campaigns, we're looking at click-through rates and, things like that and engagement. But I think overall, we are looking at the final bottom line kind of thing. How is it influencing our pipeline and our revenue? So that's shifted a little bit from the beginning, right? From definitely we are looking at specifically at Trendemon, we're looking at the 2x, 3x, 7x even, right? We're looking at that, but the pipeline is eventually our bottom line kind of thing at this point.
And another thing that we're seeing here is this alignment of teams, right? You have ops and demand, you have website, I think, and the organizational approach, we haven't touched on it because we don't have that time, but I think that is also something really fundamental to get everybody on the same page. We're not different teams pushing for different outcomes. We all see the same picture. We all have the same objective. We are just playing different roles in this kind of orchestra, right?
Yep.
Exactly. And that's something that I think Stacy mentioned we have a very collaborative team across marketing and sales. And a big thing I think in the last couple of years of that transparency and communication of what is happening. So it's helpful for everyone to know we are all working towards that same goal. It is not, no one needs to get points for doing their part. It is all working towards that same thing, and the transparency of that always on approach has been really helpful when it shifts over to the sales team, that handoff period where we are still going to be nurturing those accounts as they're having conversations with sales, and they know that it's happening, and it helps reinforce what they are speaking to. Because we are all using those same insights, we're speaking about the same products, we're speaking about the same objective. It's really helped to create a much better experience for our customers because we're speaking about the same thing.
Amazing. I know we're out of time, right? But maybe, Leanne, on this note, talking about collaborative and working better together, I think it would be great for us also to share. trying to do a segue here, but yeah. But before we kind of sign off, just wanted to announce that we have a new integration with Demandbase to allow a more streamlined operation and a better alignment between data on all these platforms. And really making sure that not just from an organizational perspective, also a technological perspective, we're able to work better, more aligned, looking at the same target accounts and groups. So that'll be coming up within this quarter, and super excited for this. And hopefully the Tenable team will be able to benefit from this. Amazing. Took some time, took a few years, granted, but we finally got there. So appreciate the patience. And yeah, at least from my end, thank you all for taking part. Appreciate you guys making the time to speak to us. Some really great insights here. Leanne?
Yeah, thank you. I always love just hearing customer stories as well. It's great to see just that evolution from that broader account targeting to that more like precision-based engagement as well, how you're able to drive just like stronger connections, increase your engagement, increase the pipeline impact, and the sales and marketing alignment piece. I always love hearing that as well. So really appreciate your time. Thank you. For everybody watching, thank you for joining us today. This session is recorded. We will share a link to the recording and the slides post-event, but hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.